getting the most out of your hash. I'm Chris. This is Skip. Skip is at Passing the Hash on Twitter. I spoke at DEF CON, and we both spoke at Black Hat. We're both full scope pen testers. Those are our blogs. So, we're here to talk about Microsoft hashes, not the other type of hash, and how to use them to get full value on a network and actually provide more value to your customers. You want to get at their data, and we've talked about this stuff at length in the past, but we want to show the full impact of losing your domain. What happens? The end result is, because of the pass the hash attack, an attacker can always have access to your data. What we're not here to talk about. So if that's what you're here for, I'm sorry. We're not going to talk about drugs. We're not going to talk about how we got the hashes, because that would be hours in and of itself. There are tons of different ways. Who do we have in here? Do we have any pen testers? So just a couple. Ask them, they'll tell you. There's a great blog post on how to dump hashes there for another day, which is awesome. Public service announcement. This is not Johnny Long's talk. You probably still have time to get over there. So what does every admin think? What's the reality? It's as simple as sending an email most of the time, or guessing a password. So a sysadmin, maybe like me, likes homebrew. Maybe he's a little too active on some forums, you're able to figure stuff out. Send him something he wants, he clicks on it, you get shell, you get domain admin, you dump the hashes. And then in between the profit and dumping the hashes is what we're talking about. We're going to fly through these slides, because the first half is me talking through this stuff, and the second half is showing whatever you guys want to see with the actual tools. So in case you don't know what a hash is, a hash function is a one-way cryptographic transformation, if you will, from a word into an actual hash. So the two types of hashes that you'll see are LM and NT. LM hashes can be cracked really easily with rainbow tables. And if you run into NT, they can also be cracked pretty easily because they're not computationally heavy to crack. But you can pass both types of hashes as if you had the password, so you don't really need to crack if you're an attacker. Does anyone not know what NTLM is? The bottom line with NTLM and with Windows single sign-on is Windows is actually passing the hash for you all the time. So you don't actually ever need the password, because it's the hash that's actually being used to authenticate. So Skip discovered that basically any program that uses NTLM authentication can be patched to pass the hash instead of requiring a password. So that includes intranet sites like SharePoint and custom.NET applications. It includes Exchange and Outlook Web Access, and it includes file and print servers as well. So lots of people have done talks on Pass the Hash. The attack's over 15 years old. There are lots of great tools that still work. The Fufus guys did it years and years ago. The main issue that we ran into is that you have to set an environmental variable, which makes scripting very difficult. So Skip was able to patch that so that you can specify either the 65 or the 68, depending on what your tool is, how you actually receive the hash on the command line so that you can script it. So what we're talking about is basically the 3 columns at the end. So you can use either one on almost any of the tools. So Samba, is anyone not familiar with Samba? It's the Linux version of the file. It's a file utility that's on Linux that allows you to control Windows machines. So to use the Samba, do you want to talk about this?
So most Samba commands take the same format. Some of them, unfortunately, they're a little different, which is really annoying when you're trying to put together a slide deck, so I just cover the majority stuff. So usually you specify the target domain / the username and then a % and the password on the command line, and you've just specified everything you need to authenticate, and that's a capital U. And for our stuff, we just substitute the hash in for the password. Also, Samba will allow you to set the net BIOS name that is used to authenticate. So you're sending the Windows server the name that you want their logs to reference. So if you're trying to be sneaky, you can do stuff like send them the name of the DC that you're authenticating against as the actual requester for the query. And in the logs, it'll show up that the DC requested this information instead of whatever the default name is that's specified. Usually, like for Backtrack, it'll be the host name is BT by default, unless you go through and change it. The dash capital W allows you to specify the local work group. Once again, same deal. You specify your local work group is their domain. It looks less suspicious if they're actually doing the right thing and running through their logs. So to kind of put the whole thing together, we do an SMB client, which is an FTP client to connect to Windows shares. Dash capital U, domain / username %, LM hash, :NT hash. Usually the LM hashes are zeroed out, so you have 32 zeros there, and the NT hashes are whatever you get out of the hash zone. And then specify the fake name, fake work group, and then // and the IP address, and then the share, in this case, the C.O share. Net command, Samba has a net command that is kind of a roll-up of several Windows commands to include the Windows net command. There's 3 different protocols that it uses, RAP, ADS, and RPC. RAP is really old, like OS2, old. ADS is LDAP, we'll touch on that in a minute. Really, for a lot of the useful stuff, NetRPC is probably the most comprehensive functionality. And you just use the -U with the domain, user, and the password. You pass the IP address or the name of the machine you want to connect to with capital S. The interesting thing is some commands don't actually require administrator privileges. So just querying a list of users from the domain, for example, doesn't require any privilege other than usually being authenticated. So you can actually use a computer account for that, for example. The group and the RPC shares are the same way. So that's information you can use depending on what kind of account you have to start off with to further target attacks down the road. Then other stuff obviously will require admin, like stopping and starting services, adding, deleting users, changing group membership, that sort of thing. So LDAP has been kind of a pain in the butt because the Open LDAP, which is the de facto Linux LDAP client, outsources all of its authentication methods to a library called SASL, which is an RPC generic framework, or RFC-based generic framework for authentication. The problem is Cyrus SASL doesn't support GSS SPEGNOW, which is security policy negotiated, I believe, which actually allows us to try end-to-end authentication instead of Kerberos. So it'll let you do basic authentication all day long, which really doesn't help if you don't have the password, and it's sent across the wire in plain text. So the Samba folks actually hacked in their own mini SASL into the Samba build tree itself. But by default, it wouldn't come off of using Kerberos if it was at all available. So I had to do a little creative commenting out or adding an appropriate 0 to make sure that it failed to start the Kerberos stuff, and then the net ADS stuff started working. So you can do raw LDAP searches in Active Directory, which, depending on what you're doing, may be useful to narrow down specific users and groups, that sort of thing. Candy queries, get a list of the GPOs. Samba also, at its core, is a series of libraries that provides RPC support, DCE RPC support for Linux. And so a number of things actually link directly into Samba to do its, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. So WinExe is a nice PSExec clone. Once again, it sort of follows the same syntax as everything else with the dash capital new target domain user password //IP or name, and then the command. I'll go through on the demo and show that. You can also use it to do dash system to get around UAC. So you can launch a shell just as system, which can be very useful. WMI, there was a project that did monitoring for Windows boxes that was Linux-based that implemented a rudimentary WMI query capability that, once again, links in with Samba, links in with an older version, but it still works. So, once again, you can do that. So if you ran, for example, select the command line, name, process ID from Win32_process, you can get basically a process list with pigs, and all that stuff is done remotely using WMI, which is kind of cool and can be very useful. Probably the more interesting one is you can actually use WMI to start a process. However, you only get the process ID that was started returned. So if you're expecting output from that particular process, you're not going to get it unless you redirect it to a text file and then go grab it with something else like SMB client. So you basically have blind command injection. OpenChange is a framework that's built on top of Samba that allows you to interact with Exchange servers. So you can read email, you can access calendar information, you can send email. Once again, because it links in with Samba and we patch Samba to pass the hash, this utility now is past the hash as well. So you can authenticate when you dump the hashes, you can basically send or read anybody's email on the domain.
All right, so as you can see, basically anything that's in Linux that uses NTLM and a password can be patched to use a hash. And Skip's done a great job of basically going down everything that was in Backtrack and patching it. And then Pure Hate took all those tools, packaged them up, and put them in Backtrack. So all of this stuff has already been released. It's all in Backtrack as of several weeks ago. Probably one of the coolest things for a pen tester is being able to use the NTLM and web stuff, because enterprises are pushing NTLM out of their enterprise. They're pushing things like Outlook Web Access all the way out of their perimeter. So once you've gone in and taken the hashes and walked out, you can now come back in using Firefox to authenticate back to Outlook Web Access as whoever you want, which makes getting back into a network a lot easier. I am, in fact. So here's a screenshot of what it looks like, the Firefox version that's actually in Backtrack in the Pass the Hash suite. You just supply the hash for the password, and you will log in to Outlook Web Access, SharePoint, any other .NET-based application that uses NTLM authentication. There's a little bit of a trick that you have to do. You just go into About Config, and you get that really scary warning from Firefox. You're going to break a bunch of stuff. You're not. Just search for NTLM and turn the force generic NTLM to true in order to do that. Or if you like the scripts, Skip has also hatched curl to pass the hash as well. And again, any language, anything that's actually using NTLM can be patched to pass the hash. Free TDS is how you can pass the hash to MS SQL databases, which can be really handy as well. The main drawback, though, is what we've seen is people complain this isn't working. Windows authentication has to be, integrated authentication has to be enabled. It's got to actually use NTLM for it to work. And Skip's going to get up here in a second and go through the demo. If there's any of the stuff that you actually want to see, you guys are going to drive the demo. We scripted one out for Black Hat, and a lot of the stuff that people wanted to see wasn't in there. So whatever you guys want to see, any of this stuff, interacting with databases, web applications, just start thinking about that for when he gets up here in a second. So we included a lot of these steps in the slides so that when you're on a pen test or when you want to try this stuff out, you can use this as a reference to go back. And that's all the step-by-step to set up the tools that are actually in Backtrack already. There are lots of other pass-the-hash tools. They kind of all have one thing in common. If you've used them before, just like the stuff that we've added as well, they can be a little bit flaky. So sometimes having multiple ways of being able to do something is helpful. So, demo time. So what do you guys want to see first? Anybody? The exchange?
Yeah, give me a sec.
So what we have is a full domain environment. We've got databases set up, website, you've got SharePoint, and Exchange set up as well. Kind of limited to the number of VMs we can run at this point.
I gotta be with on the VMs. Yes.
Does anyone have any other questions? While we're loading the demo?
You have any issues with SB signing?
If the tool is patched to support SB signing, you shouldn't have an issue. Which are not.
Most of the Samba stuff supports it.
Yeah.
Run into problems, might run into problems with other stuff, but depends on the version of Samba that's being used. Like the WMI stuff, for example. Got the DC up, so I'll just go ahead and start with some of the stuff for that. All the other, yeah,
On the passing the hash block spot, there's some links to the demos that were in that were pre-recorded for previous comps. So if we don't cover something, check that out. You can watch those demos. Skip put them all up on YouTube. And I know the exchange one is in there.
I'll just start off with doing some stuff against the DC, and hopefully the VM will start out for the exchange stuff. So just to show the path for the pass the hash tools and Backtrack that I added are, it's in pentest passwords, PTH bin. all the stuff should be compiled so that it looks for the appropriate libraries in that directory tree. So all you should really have to do is just append that path to your local path. So
So here he's using,
administrative.
There's a reason why most Unix commands are like 2 to 3 characters long.
Exactly. Username is short.
alright, so he's using WinExe to pass the hash.
Can you jump to the mic?
Rudimentary shell on the DC. Sorry, he just used WinExe to pass the administrator hash to the DC and run cmd.exe.
I did that as administrator, so I'll also do it in a sec. And so now I'm also running as system. So if you need something to run as system and you don't want to screw with UAC, which for most things you don't want to screw with UAC, you want to run a system.
It's important to note that this isn't encrypted as well, so you're not going to want to do this on a network that's being monitored.
You guys found any way around the problems with the backspace and sort of things like that?
I haven't looked at it to be honest. It's probably just a translation problem in the code. You were talking about the backspace problem that's having with WinExe. Yeah, it's annoying, but it's not insurmountable. It's not fatal. So I just usually take more time typing the commands, make sure you get it right, rather than kind of just going. But it is something I want to look at some point. I think it's probably just a translation problem with the service. Because WinExe actually compiles, it uses GCC to compile to Windows services, to a 64-bit service. So I'm sure it's probably something just pretty simple to fix. I just haven't looked at it, to be honest. I keep hoping that they're going to fix it for me, so I don't have to. The nice thing about the net command is that you can either do the authentication stuff at the beginning or at the end. I try to do it all the setup stuff beforehand so that I can just change the commands that are being run on the end. So that gives us a list of the users. And then I'll just do the same thing with Alice Jones so you can see that it works with a regular user account. So in order to enumerate basic stuff, all you really need for access is, like I said, just a regular account. You had a question?
Can you show where you're smoothing the log?
Oh, sure. Sure it works before we demos get a little.
I mean, is there anything in the law that would take some law?
Yeah, because, right, Muslim songs have.
Right, but that was something that didn't really get started until like 2008, I think. Might have been in 2008 or 2. For example, I think it was 2008 or 2 that was the first time you could actually see in the Windows logs that NTLM was being used. So if you were using 2008 or going against 2008 domain, you couldn't even tell that NTLM was used as the underlying protocol. You saw it was somebody authenticating.
Right, so now you look for things that, authentication sessions that should have been started with Kerberos, and if they're started with NTLM, that's strange, go investigate that. A lot of the tools don't specify these options, so you'll see Samba or the actual hosting in the actual packets that went across. So those are other ways you can find it. Are there any other questions?
Notes around how to do some of the Samba stuff, so I'll just go through some of that. I haven't done a lot of testing to see what requires privileges and what doesn't with a lot of the specific commands. You should be able to do queries. I would imagine as a regular user. So we'll start with Alice here.
So these are going to be things you're going to want to build into like a quick scripts text document that has all the commands you want to run, so you can just quickly change stuff and copy and paste. That, as you can see, it can be quite cumbersome to type each command for each thing.
So as you can see here, I just did a search for name. So you specify the and in front, and then object class user, and then the name, the CEO star, so it'll pull out anybody that has CEO in the name. And then in this case, it came back with CEO T boss. We have all his AD stuff. The last time he changed his password. Last one, his last password was set is SID. And if you wanted to pull out a specific property, so you could just say object SID, and then it will pull out a list of SIDs for the various users, which, depending on what you're doing, may or may not be helpful. There's some other interesting stuff that Samba can do that I haven't had a chance to fully explore yet. One of the things it can do is under NetRPC, I believe. Privilege. Oh yeah, NetRPC rights. You can actually assign individual machine rights to user accounts. So you could assign the log on a service and do things like that, and you could actually potentially sort of work around not having an admin on a particular box by just granting all the rights that a local admin would have, for example. There's just a lot of really interesting stuff you can do with Samba that, in all honesty, I haven't even really begun to scratch the surface or get everything figured out as to what you can do. Yeah, so here's a list of all the GPOs. I don't think I really have anything on here, so I think it's just default domain policy. Which, once again, Chris actually wrote a blog entry on being able to extract password information.
Group policy preference. Yeah, group policy preference passwords are stored in a easily decrypted form, so that would point you in the right direction of finding those. See if we can get the exchange demo working.
It does not like having the hard drive pulled up 100.
All right, so the one that you wanted, I'm sorry. Demo guides do not like this.
I can actually, once I have a chance to power everything off, power it back on, I can probably, do a demo out there for you. Just have to power everything off to get the hard drive. Let's see what interesting stuff we got.
And again, that's on YouTube. There's one with all the Firefox stuff and the open change. Actually pulling down the CEO mail, his actual mailbox, and reading his email. And
I might actually have the black hat demo if you want to see that. I'd actually planned on doing live, so I apologize for that. Yeah, I'll just work through some of this stuff. You've already seen the WinExe. All right, so this is the free TDS, which is the libraries. Free TDS itself is just a library to interface with MS SQL. Requires a configuration file. You can either pass it as an environmental variable, or you can just fix it. At some point, I'm probably going to look at just being able to pass all that stuff on the command line. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So in this case, we're logging in MS SQL using the MS SQL account. And I changed the last character from an A to a B just to demonstrate the difference you see when you put an incorrect username and hash in there. And so here you select that at version, type go, and you get Microsoft SQL Server 2008. You can also just put a semicolon on the end of the line, and it'll forego the need to type go. I always just type go, but personal preference.
so the big deal with this is we're going after data. CEOs don't care about domain admin. They don't care about the hashes that you dump. They don't care about the shell you have in their domain controller. They do care about their financial data, their HR data that resides in databases. So now you can turn around, find the account that has access to that data, pass the hash to that, pull that down, and give that to them. And it has we've seen it has a much more dramatic effect than, oh, we took your domain in a couple hours, we can do whatever we want. They don't really understand that.
Yeah, so here all I'm really doing is just kind of poking around with the AdventureWorks database looking for its credit card data is exactly what I go after. Just poking around. And there's more than a few fat fingers in here, so just moving on. All right, here's Firefox. So start off with the about config. There's the scary warning. Tab NTLM. And then off force generic NTLM, just set it to true. In this case, we're going to go to the internet site. And in the demo, it actually set the internet setup to have different screens for different users so that you can differentiate Alice didn't have privileges to run the search app, but Bob did, that sort of thing. Yeah, so here, running as Alice, we see that don't have permission to run. So we sign in with Bob, I think it is. Bob Cash, and he has the ability to search that particular, using the search feature that was added to SharePoint. And you can see that it pulled up. So you can actually see that there's different stuff from different people. Yeah.
You found a way, like in bulk, you got, you can ask 2,000 web servers to identify which web servers support this authentication mechanism, just quick and dirty. Isn't that do it during a pen test?
And that come back and tell you what the mechanisms are.
There's no script for that, right?
Yeah. And you get more information if it's at the script for your application.
Can you repeat what you said?
Oh, I'm sorry. He said that there's a NSC script that you can use to get more information on the authentication methods that were used. Do you know off the top of your head what it was, Tom?
No.
Okay. He's one of the guys that writes NSC scripts, so I'm assuming he knows what he's talking about.
Some days.
Right. Yeah.
So, we run a number of Samba servers, propel that back in.
Okay.
Functionality of Active Directory domain for users. I'm curious, how many of these attacks would be effective against that actual Active Directory domain? Any of them?
Are you primarily using Kerberos or NTLM, or do you know?
I believe it's in DLM.
Okay, well, if it's using NTLM, then in theory it should work, but I haven't tested it. So, for the type of work we do, we don't really see Linux Samba domains that are stood up. It's usually Windows domains, and if there is a Samba server, it's attached to the Windows domain, but the domain controller is actually done in Windows. But in theory, I would imagine it's, it would be the same thing. I just haven't set up a Samba domain to see if on the back end it actually stores the hashes or what all it does. It's probably, I would expect it to work, but until, I spend the time to set it up and do it, I can't say for certain. Yeah.
You pass the hash and you pass what it doesn't work in the logs, does it show up as a login?
It'll show up as a failed login, and you can actually use bad hashes to lock out accounts.
No joy.
Well, we've had assessments where they wanted to simulate a denial of service, so we used their Outlook Web Access, which did NTLM, to just pass 3 bad hashes to every user which we previously enumerated and locked out their entire domain. So, there's risk involved in passing, and this was done, from like the internet level. So they wanted to see that why that was a bad idea, and so we were kind of surprised they said, yeah, go ahead and do it, but.
So the bottom line with that is that if you push NTLM SSP out of your perimeter, without any kind of attacking, you should already know that that type of attack can happen to you. They can just go through and lock every account. But you also open yourself up for any potential compromise where someone just comes in, kicks down the door, and you catch them, and they leave, but they leave with your hashes. Unless you change every one of your users' passwords, which we've seen people try to do, and stop your users from setting the same password, or stop the admins from setting the same password again, they'll be able to easily walk right back in the front door through SharePoint, through Outlook Web Access, through your proxy, through Citrix, through all these things that are using NTLM authentication.
Yeah, I'll do it. Change it.
Fixed it?
Yeah.
And the NSC script is called HTTP off, and it will give you the realm and the type of authentication that it supports.
So, in case you didn't hear that, it's HTTP auth, and it'll give you the realm and the type of authentication that is requested. All right, so to use Exchange, you have to set up a profile to use first. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just setting up a profile for Bob, Allison, the CEO. So then you can use OpenChange Client to interact with the individual profiles, but just specifying them on the command line. In this case, I'm using Alice to send an email to the CEO from the command line with that subject, and then the body is just hello or something.
And this is, of course, with actually authenticating to Exchange. The actual account's authenticating. It's not just sending an open relay email.
And then I'm sending another one to Bob. And then you can use Exchange to Inbox to dump mails from Exchange to a local mailbox, and then you can go in and read it with your favorite mail client of choice. I think I use Pine. Some people prefer Mud, whatever. So then you just go in, you can read Alice's email. You can also re-upload, you can change the status of messages, so you can delete messages and upload it back to the server, and the Exchange server will sync up the differences. So if you wanted to use, like, send a test email to demonstrate that you had access, but then you can go and delete it, you can do all sorts of interesting things. It takes phishing to a whole new level. It's actually coming from your boss. Once again, it all depends on the ROE and what sort of effects they want, but you know, we wanted to demonstrate the effect of what happens when you lose control of your Windows hashes. Let's see. I think we're sort of running into time. 5-ish? Okay, that's fine. So just a real quick example of the WMI. So in this case, we're passing the hash, and we're doing name process ID from Win32 processors. It's just a WMI process listing remotely. And you can see you get the PID, the name, and then we can, oh yeah, this is where all I do is I execute remotely a command.exe waxc dir C:, and then redirect the file to Windows temp, and then I'll go and grab the file using smd get. And you can see the listing of the C drive there. Get this switch back over. I apologize for the demo. The hard drive got yanked out while I was processing the read around apparently, so at the end I got freaked out.
All right, so any questions? All right, we would like to thank all the people helped us with the tools and the process of getting them added to Backtrack, and with this presentation and previous ones. And we'd like to thank everybody for coming to DerbyCon. This conference is awesome. We will definitely be back. If there are no other questions, that completes our presentation.